Today we're going to look at the Consew 206 RB4. We'll do a nice walkthrough and look at some of the interesting features on this compound walking foot sewing machine. This is how it sews with a clutch motor. Whoa, baby. And this is how it sews with a servo. Oiling an industrial sewing machine like this is of course very important. Let's look at a couple of the commonly missed oil spots on this particular machine. So the RB4 is a walking foot machine. In fact, it's a compound feed walking foot, meaning that the needle is down when the material or the leather is being advanced. It's a very capable walking foot for upholstery projects or leather work. This is a manual oil machine. There's no oil bath underneath, and as such, it's very important to hit those oil points. So do look up your manual and see all the common ones, but I want to share with you a couple spots that I usually see missed. Under the machine here, you'll find an oil well. You can fill it by removing this flat-bladed screw. Fill it with regular sewing machine oil until the oil is near or at the red fill line here. That will saturate the wicks in the oil well to lubricate your hook area and some of the vital components underneath your machine. I can't tell you how many times I've tipped back a Consew to see this oil well completely empty. Maybe the owner never knew that they had a semi-automatic oiling system on their machine, but remember to fill that oil well if your machine is so equipped. The safety clutch is just here. If you have a big jam up in your bobbin area, it may disengage your safety clutch. And that would be where this side of the shaft no longer rotates and your machine won't sew. It just appears like nothing moves. So reset your safety clutch in that case, clear the jam, and you should be good to go. The other commonly missed lubrication points are behind this cover plate in the rear of the machine. There you'll find 3 lubrication points. Make sure to oil those up good every 3 to 4 bobbins you sew. Now this machine just had a servo motor installed, so that'll give us good variable speed control, and it's actually got a knob right on the motor that'll help limit the maximum speed so you're not sewing faster than you want. One of the last things to do when you're installing a servo motor is to readjust the bobbin winder so it makes good contact with the belt. Let's do that now. What we see here, after a motor change, the belt no longer contacts the bobbin winder engagement wheel. And what you're looking for is when this lever is retracted, the wheel should very nearly touch the belt. And we'll go ahead and retighten the screws in that position. And this is the key vantage point when you're winding a bobbin. You want to sight down and make sure that it's winding evenly from left to right. If it's not, there's a simple adjustment at the back of the bobbin winder. It'll help you even things out. Okay, another thing I noticed is when that bobbin winder popped off automatically, it did so much too early. We want to wind more thread onto that M-style bobbin, so we'll make a quick adjustment there as well. We'll turn this adjustment screw clockwise to bend the guide finger down a little further and allow more thread to be wound onto our bobbin. Now our bobbin winder was doing a good job of loading bobbins evenly, but if yours is stacking up thread to the left or to the right, just loosen this screw. Make a simple adjustment by moving this tension assembly to the left or to the right. Tighten the screw and retest. Let's talk about a simple adjustment on the back of the machine that's done with a wing nut, so no tools required, but you'll make this adjustment to account for varying material thickness. When you're getting set up to sew, pay attention to this wing nut adjustment. This will adjust the steppage of your machine. This would be a very low steppage position here, where the feet don't lift very high relative to one another. This would be adjusted for maximum steppage. If you tighten the wing nut in that position, this would be appropriate for thick seams, leather work, or situations where you have very bulky material. For common applications, I'll usually adjust that wing nut so it's about 2/3 of the way towards the top. Now let's look at bobbin size and maximum thread size on this machine. The 206 RB4 uses a M-style bobbin. That's a large industrial bobbin, pretty good capacity to it. Compare that to a Consew 226, which uses a smaller bobbin. It's a G-style bobbin on that machine. Or something like a Juki LU563 that uses a very big U-style bobbin. But this is a very capable size, and you can use it whether you're doing small projects like belts and wallets, or if you're doing auto upholstery. To load the bobbin, just take the bobbin case out of the machine, and this is very similar to many machines. Make sure that the thread is coming off this way, so that when you put that through the anti-backlash mechanism, it goes this way. Okay. Test your tension in the bobbin case. Make sure it's adequate. You want just light tension. The upper tension is always going to be heavier than the bobbin tension. Yes, you want a balanced stitch in your material or in your finished product, but it's never going to feel balanced. The upper tension will always be much, much greater than the bobbin tension. If you do need to make an adjustment to the bobbin tension, there's two small screws. One just retains the finger that is this tension assembly for the bobbin case, and the other one usually has a little lip or a ring around it. That one with the lip around it is the one that adjusts tension. And so very small adjustments on that make a big difference. So think about that in terms of 1/8 turn or 1/4 turn adjustments, and then you'll retest. Before you remove or install the bobbin case, make sure that these two dots align on the hand wheel. Having those dots aligned on the hand wheel, just make sure that the bobbin case opener is out of your way, and you'll be free and clear to install the bobbin. Removing the bobbin is just as easy. Just pull that tab back. The bobbin and the bobbin case will easily come out. 1/38 thread is about the functional maximum for this machine, and that's what we're using for our upper thread. A more common 92 weight thread is what we're using on the bobbin side. Now, if you're just starting out and you want to get the hang of your machine and dial in your adjustments, I really recommend you use a 90 or a 92 weight thread with a size 20 needle. So the needle system for this machine is a 135/17, or it will be called a 135/16 to denote a leather point. And then there's also a size associated with the needle. This is a size 22 needle for sewing 138 thread. For 138, I would either have a 22 or a 23 size needle. For the more common 92 weight thread, just use a size 19 or even preferably a 20 needle. Hold back your threads and we'll start to sew. And from there, we'll be able to adjust the thread tension. Okay, so we've got brown thread on the top and white on the bottom, just to help us with adjusting our tension. And it looks like I guessed pretty well because I don't see any loose loops. Of course, if you had any loose loops on the white bottom thread, you'd have to increase the upper tension to draw those up. And that's the main adjustment you want to make, is at the upper thread tension. If you've approximated the tension of the bobbin case fairly well, you should be able to make that adjustment with the upper tension and solve any loose loops on the bottom just by increasing the upper tension. Clutch versus servo motor? Why might you want to install a servo on your walking foot? Boy, that servo motor really sews nice. With a servo and small motor pulley, you can sew fairly slow if you want, but you can still motor on. It's just that you have the control that was really lacking with that clutch motor. Whoa, baby. You know, some old-time upholstery guys tell me, well, I have a clutch motor on my machine and I've always been able to control it just fine. And I kind of chuckle under my breath because usually to me what that means is your clutch motor friction plate is so worn out that it just doesn't have any grab anymore. And you're able to slip the clutch so effectively that it actually works for you. But if you've ever sewn on a brand new clutch motor, they are ridiculous to try to control. So my suggestion would be use that clutch motor as a new anchor for your canoe or boat and just put on a more functional variable speed servo motor. What difference does belt tension make, and how should you set the belt tension on your machine? Regardless of the style of machine you have or even the type of motor you're using, belt tension is an important issue. Now, if you have your belt set really tight, the adjustment's down by the motor, If you have those lock nuts set so it really tensions the belt tight, what you'll get is a jackrabbit start that most people don't like. So loosen up that belt so under moderate deflection it has a fair amount of give. That'll just soften up your takeoff and make it easier to control your machine. What about pulley size? How does the size of the motor pulley affect speed and performance? If you do wind up picking up a servo motor, it'll likely come with a large 75mm motor pulley. A lot of people elect to swap that out for a small motor pulley, something in the 45 to 55mm range. That'll do a couple things for you. It'll make the machine even slower and easier to control, plus it adds a bit of torque. If you do make that conversion from a clutch motor to a servo motor, you'll likely need a shorter length of V-belt. And this one is a 38-inch. That's very common for that swap. And finally, I just want to talk about a really important adjustment back here. It puts pressure on an internal leaf spring on the 206RB, and it adjusts the downward pressure on your presser feet. So let's take a look at this adjustment and what it does for us. I think the reason this confuses people is because there's no longer a thumb screw here for this adjustment. Instead, it's simply a flat blade screwdriver adjustment. Turning clockwise will increase pressure on the internal leaf spring and add more downward pressure on the foot. Counterclockwise, you'll decrease the pressure on the foot. And my advice when you think about setting this screw is to use the minimum amount of pressure that will still control the layers of material in your project. You can play around with this adjustment screw too, which has a similar feature on the center foot, but doesn't have nearly the functional effect as the other adjustment. On 206RB3 and newer machines, you'll find a stitch adjustment dial like this. You may find that the dial is hard to turn. The key is just to slightly depress the reverse lever to make that adjustment. And on the placard we see for the 206RB4, this machine was made in Japan. And interestingly, some of the 206RB5s were made in Japan as well before they switched production to China. Here's a tip for you leather workers. When you're getting ready to do a back tack that will be visible, bury your needle at bottom dead center and then continue rolling the hand wheel towards you slightly to raise the needle bar a bit. From there, depress your reverse lever and make your back tack. If your machine is set right, you'll get stitches that plunk right back into the same holes. Alright guys, there you go. Some key takeaway points on the Consew 206RB4 walking foot machine. Very, very similar to the RB5. I have heard that there are some differences in the screws and the pitch of those screws. So if you're ordering parts for the machine, make sure you order specific to an RB4. But common items like bobbin cases and presser feet will be interchangeable between the 4 and the 5. Hope some of this information has been a little helpful for you. See you on the next one. Whoa, baby.